We didn't know it was the last sunrise. I remember thinking how normal the morning looked. Orange hues smeared across the sky, frost clinging to the window, the sizzle of eggs in the pan. My daughter Ellie was still wrapped in her blanket at the kitchen table, eyes puffy, hair a tangled halo of curls. She gave me a sleepy smile as I set her plate down. If I'd known, I would have held her longer. I would have said everything I'd ever wanted to say. Instead, I turned on the radio. Static. Just static. I turned the dial, cycling through every frequency. Nothing. No NPR, no morning talk shows, not even that damn smooth jazz station that always overplayed Kenny G. Daddy, why's it so quiet? I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe the tower's down. But unease was already forming a knot in my gut. Outside, the light felt off. Too dim, like the sun had risen behind a film of dust. I stepped out onto the porch and looked up. The sky was pale, bone white, like an old sheet left too long in the sun. But the sun wasn't there. Just an empty sky where it should have been. No warmth, no glow, just a cold, lifeless light that cast long shadows and made everything look wrong. I ran back inside and turned on the TV. Every channel, emergency broadcasts, FEMA, NASA, the White House. Faces pale with confusion and fear, talking all at once. The message boiled down to this. At approximately 5:17 a.m. Eastern Time, the sun vanished from all detection. The gravitational effects remain intact. We are investigating this unprecedented anomaly. Vanished, not blocked, not eclipsed, gone. We had 8 minutes of residual light left, they said. That's how long it takes light from the sun to reach Earth, which meant it had already happened before we even opened our eyes. That was 3 hours ago. The light hasn't faded completely. Not yet, but it's dimming. Slower than they thought it would. Scientists, what few are still broadcasting, say the phenomenon doesn't follow known physical laws. Some are calling it a rupture, a cosmic bleed. Others say it's divine. I say it's death. My phone buzzed endlessly for the first hour, then nothing. Cell towers stopped. Power grids began failing city by city. People holed up. Some fled to churches, some to bunkers. I stayed. For Ellie, she doesn't understand what's happening, not really. She just knows it's cold and dark and getting worse. Will the sun come back? She asks me every hour, her voice smaller each time. Of course, I lie. It's just hiding, like a game of peekaboo. But even she can feel it. The world is wrong. By noon it was night. Not like any night we've ever known. There were no stars, no moon, just this oppressive black dome stretching forever above us. And the quiet, like the world is holding its breath. Waiting for something worse, I gathered candles, flashlights, food, turned the fireplace on. Our breath hangs in the air now, even inside. I wrapped Ellie in layers. She keeps her stuffed bunny pressed to her chest. And then, the sky changed. Not light, not stars, eyes, dozens, hundreds, hanging in the void above, wide and unblinking, like something looking down on us. Watching. Each blink comes with a flicker in the lights, a cold wind, a deep vibration in the bones, like the earth is groaning. Ellie says she sees people in the sky, shapes walking between the stars. She draws them, thin, tall, with no faces. I tell her they're just dreams, but I see them too. And worse, I think they see us. I didn't sleep that night, not because I didn't want to. My body was begging for rest, but the dark pressed in from every side, thick and endless, and every creak of the house felt like it came from something alive outside. Ellie eventually drifted off on the couch, curled beneath 4 blankets and my winter coat. She clutched my arm until her grip loosened. I stayed up watching the fire slowly shrink to embers. I kept looking out the window. The sky hadn't changed, still black, still full of those eyes. They blinked out now and then, replaced by shifting shapes, long silhouettes moving across the void like figures behind a frosted pane. Sometimes I'd swear they were closer. At around 3 a.m., the silence shattered. There was a low rumble, like thunder, except it never stopped. A vibration deep in the earth, humming through the floorboards. Ellie jolted awake and screamed, and I grabbed her in my arms. "Daddy, the house is shaking." I know, it's okay, baby, it's okay." But it wasn't okay. The fireplace went out all at once, and the temperature dropped like we'd been thrown into space. The windows iced over, the walls cracked, and I heard something outside, footsteps, heavy, slow, not human. I picked Ellie up and ran us into the hallway, away from any windows. I had no plan, just instinct, get away from whatever was coming. Then the radio turned on. I hadn't touched it in hours. I thought it was broken, but it crackled to life and began playing soft, distant music. Something like a lullaby, except it was wrong, off-key, dissonant, like it was being played backward. Ellie whimpered and buried her face in my chest, and then a voice came through. Not human, not even close. The sound was more like the impression of a voice filtered through static, distortion, and something else, like the grind of metal under pressure. I couldn't understand it at first, then slowly I could. We see you. We remember the warmth. We envy your flame. Then nothing. The radio went dead. The music stopped, and the silence returned, deeper than before, heavier, like a weight pressing on the soul. Ellie looked up at me. Was that the sun talking? I didn't know how to answer. By morning, though time had become meaningless, the world had fallen colder. I found my breath freezing on my beard, even inside the house. We were down to the last logs for the fireplace, and the generator refused to start. I covered the windows in blankets and taped the cracks in the walls. But the cold didn't care. It seeped in like smoke, invisible and merciless. I tried the phone again. Dead, no service, no internet. But the emergency channel, 88.0 FM, crackled back to life sometime around what used to be noon. A woman's voice, tired, shaking, but alive. This is Dr. Elena Morrow at the Deep Sky Array in Arizona. If you can hear this, you are not alone. I turned the dial up, pressed my ear close. The sun's gravitational influence remains. The Earth has not been flung into space, but the light is gone. And something else has replaced it. There are structures in space, geometries we don't recognize, non-Euclidean. They're watching. She paused. Static filled the air. Then, do not go outside after nightfall. Do not trust voices that sound like your loved ones. They are not who they claim to be. Ellie looked at me. What's she mean? I turned the radio off. Later, I heard knocking at the door. 3 slow knocks, then silence, then 3 more. I looked through the peephole. No one was there, but when I opened the door just a crack, I saw footprints in the snow. Bare, human-looking, but way too long. The toes were pointed outward like a ballerina's, and they led away from the house, into the forest. Something was playing with us. Ellie began to complain of whispers, said she heard Mommy's voice calling to her from her bedroom. My wife died 2 years ago, buried in the ground on a sunny April afternoon. I found Ellie sitting on her bed, staring at the window. There's someone out there, she said softly. I looked. Nothing. Just snow and trees and darkness, but as I pulled the curtain closed, I saw movement. A tall figure, impossibly thin, standing at the edge of the woods. Just standing. Watching. I locked every door and every window. I boarded up the ones in Ellie's room. I kept her close. That night, I dreamt of something ancient and vast, pulling itself across the stars, devouring suns like lanterns being snuffed out. It turned toward Earth, and I felt it look into me. And inside that dream, it whispered, "You are not alone. You never were. The stars remember." When I woke up, I wasn't sure if the dream was mine, or Ellie's. I tried to keep Ellie on a routine. Waking up, brushing teeth, reading together, anything that resembled the old world. Anything to anchor her to what life used to feel like. But every day, it got harder. The cold was cruel and constant. No matter how many layers I wrapped us in, it never left our bones. Worse than the cold were the sounds. They began on the 5th day. Not loud, just faint things at first. A soft scratching from the attic. A low moan echoing from under the floorboards. Whispers that always stopped when I got close. I told myself it was the wind, the house settling. My nerves, but Ellie heard them too. She started waking up in the middle of the night, crying, pointing toward the corners of the room. She'd say things like, "There's someone behind the walls, Daddy." Or, more chillingly, The man with the long face says he used to be warm. I stopped asking questions. I didn't want to know more. On what would have been the sixth day without sunlight, I ventured outside. I had to. Supplies were running low, and I hadn't heard a voice on the radio since Dr. Morrow's broadcast 2 days prior. Maybe she was dead now. Maybe everyone was. The snow was black, not dirty, not ash-covered. Black, like ink. Like it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Every step I took felt wrong, like walking through wet ash. The trees had changed too, bare, yes, but twisted. The branches curled like fingers, reaching up to the starless void. No birds, no insects, no wind. Only the eyes above, unmoving now, staring. I made it 3 blocks to a neighbor's house, an older man named Harrison who used to invite Ellie over to feed his chickens. His front door was wide open. Inside, the house was still. Harrison was at his kitchen table, frozen stiff, eyes open. A shotgun on the floor beside him and a note pinned to his chest with a knife. I didn't read it. Couldn't. There were words written on the walls, though. Big, uneven letters in black paint. Or something darker. It's not the dark that kills you. It's what walks in it. I took what food I could carry and left without looking back. That night, Ellie asked me again when the sun was coming back. I didn't have the heart to lie. I don't know, I said, but I'm not going to let anything happen to you. She nodded slowly and then said, "They said you can't stop it." I froze. Who? The things in the sky. They come in my dreams. They said we're just stories now. Old stories that got forgotten. And when nobody remembers a story anymore, it ends. She said it like she was talking about cartoons. I didn't know what to say. I just held her tighter. Later that night, she drew another picture. I found it beside her pillow when she fell asleep. It showed our house surrounded by tall, dark figures, their arms too long, eyes wide and white. Above them, the black sky, with those same pale eyes looking down. In the corner, a small sun drawn in crayon, smiling, surrounded by flames, and an X over it. I burned the drawing in the fireplace, but the fire didn't help. The shadows in the corners kept getting darker. Then came the scratching again, only louder. I sat in the hallway outside Ellie's room with a crowbar across my lap. The sound came from inside the walls. It moved, up the stairs, then back down, then into the vents. Sometimes it stopped right above me. Sometimes I swear I heard breathing. At 2:43 a.m., a voice came through the radio again. It wasn't the woman. It wasn't the sun thing. It was a man this time, shaky, gasping. If anyone's listening, this is Station Echo 3 in Oregon. They're coming through the black snow. They look like us. But they're not. They wear your faces like clothes. Don't open the doors. Don't trust the light. Then screaming. Then silence. The power flickered. The radio went dead. And the scratching stopped. That's when the doorbell rang. Just one. Soft ding. Ellie stirred in her sleep but didn't wake. I stood up, heart in my throat, and crept toward the front door. I didn't open it, just looked through the peephole. My wife was standing outside, or something wearing her face. She smiled, just like she used to on Saturday mornings, and waved at me. Her lips moved, but no sound came through. Her eyes were all wrong, no pupils, just endless black. She mouthed, "Let me in." I didn't move. She didn't either, just kept smiling. After a few minutes, she stopped waving, tilted her head, and then she spoke, but not with her mouth. Her voice came from behind me. "You promised you'd never leave me in the dark." I turned around so fast I nearly fell. No one was there. When I looked through the peephole again, she was gone, but the footprints were still there, and they were walking up the wall. I nailed the door shut after that, not just locked, nailed. Wood slats, screws, furniture against every entrance. The windows were long covered, but I added more. Blankets, trash bags, duct tape, anything to keep them out. Ellie stayed unusually quiet the next morning. She stared at her cereal for a long time without touching it. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "They don't like you stopping them." I knelt beside her. "What do you mean?" "They told me. Last night, the man with no fingers. He said you're breaking the story." My stomach twisted. What story? Her lip trembled. Ours. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. By then, my concept of time had fully unraveled. The sky was permanently black. Clocks still ticked, but days felt stretched and warped, like we were slipping between hours instead of passing through them. I started hearing things in the static. Not voices, at least not like before, more like memories, fragments. My mother laughing, Ellie as a toddler calling for me in the backyard, my father yelling at the TV, all pouring in through the radio static like the air itself remembered what life used to sound like. Each time, I almost dropped the thing. Each time, I wanted to believe it was real. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The world was unraveling, and whatever lived in the dark was using familiarity to break us. That's when the doorbell rang again. I didn't move this time. I knew better. But it didn't stop. Ding, ding, ding. A slow, deliberate rhythm. Like it was trying to annoy me into answering. Like it knew I was there, just on the other side. Then came the scratching. Again, only this time, it wasn't from the walls. It came from inside Ellie's room. I ran to her door, heart slamming, crowbar in hand. She was still asleep, or pretending to be, tucked beneath the blankets. But something was wrong. The closet door stood slightly ajar. "Ellie," I whispered, "stay under the covers." No matter what, I stepped forward and kicked the closet door wide open. Nothing, just her clothes, old boxes, dust. And then a voice whispered directly into my ear, "You forgot my birthday." I spun, swinging the crowbar into empty air, but there was nothing behind me, just the chill, just the deep hum from beneath the house that had started sometime the night before. Ellie whimpered. I turned to her and saw the sheets stained with frost. Her fingers were turning blue. We couldn't stay here much longer. I remembered the community shelter down the road, the church basement. It was built back in the Cold War days, reinforced, stocked, secure. Maybe it still had power, heat, food, anything. I wrapped Ellie in every layer I could find, coats, scarves, gloves, 2 sizes too big. I kept the crowbar in one hand and the flashlight in the other. The beam barely cut through the black snow swirling outside. The storm was silent. No wind, no sound at all. Just flakes falling like soot from the sky. As we walked down the road, the dark pressed in like a physical thing. The flashlight's beam flickered constantly, and the battery gauge began to drop faster than it should. I kept Ellie in front of me, one hand on her shoulder. Shapes moved in the trees. Not running, not hiding, following, just out of reach, just far enough that I couldn't make out the details. I whispered, "Don't look at them. Keep walking." Ellie obeyed. But I looked, and for a moment I saw it. A creature tall and spindly, its head twisted too far to one side, skin sagging like melted wax. Its limbs were too many, folding in and out of its body like origami. And its eyes, white, empty, burning with memory. Then it blinked, and I remembered something I never lived. A field, a burning sky, voices screaming, a sun that wasn't ours. Then it vanished into the snow. We reached the shelter just as the flashlight died. The door was frozen shut, but I pried it open with the crowbar and shoved Ellie inside. The basement was pitch black, but warm, blessedly warm. I found an old hand-crank lantern and got it working. The room filled with dim orange light. The place had been used recently, footprints in the dust, cans scattered, a sleeping bag, but no people. No sign of struggle, just absence. Ellie crawled into the sleeping bag and fell asleep almost immediately. She was pale, lips cracked, but she was breathing steady. I sat beside her and kept the lantern going. Then I noticed the walls, symbols carved into the concrete, jagged, alien, like someone had taken a blade and etched them in a frenzy. And between them, words, "The light was a gift. Now they want it back. Remember us." And beneath all of it, "If you can still dream, you can still burn." That last line chilled me more than the cold ever could. Because I had been dreaming, and in those dreams, the eyes in the sky were closer. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke, the lantern was dimming again, and Ellie was standing at the far wall, staring at the carvings. Her face was blank. I rushed over. "Ellie, what are you doing?" She pointed at a symbol, one I hadn't noticed before. It looked like a sun being pulled apart. "I saw this in the sky," she said. "In your dream." She shook her head. "Number just now." I looked up. I froze. The ceiling was concrete. There was no way she could have seen the sky. The wall cracked open like it had been waiting. It wasn't a door. It wasn't even hollow. Just split, right down the center. And beyond it, there was no more shelter, only descent. A staircase carved into black rock, slick with frost, spiraling down into the deep. It felt old, not just ancient but wrong, like it was from a time before time. The rock pulsed faintly under my fingertips, and when I leaned in to listen, I heard breathing. Not air or wind. Breathing. Ellie looked at it, then at me, and simply said, "They're calling us now." We left the basement behind. I should have been afraid. Should have picked Ellie up, boarded the wall back up, and prayed to whatever God still watched us. But something tugged at me, something familiar. I'd dreamed of this place. We descended slowly. Each step felt colder, heavier. The air grew thick with pressure, like we were walking deeper into the ocean. My flashlight flickered, then died entirely. The only light came from the walls themselves, veins of dull golden glow threading through the obsidian, pulsing like a heartbeat. Ellie didn't need help. She moved ahead of me, fearless, like she'd been here before, and I started to wonder if she had. At the bottom was a chamber. It was enormous, far larger than it should have been, considering we were beneath a small-town church basement. The geometry was impossible. Angles that shouldn't exist, arches that bent in on themselves, and in the center, suspended in the air by nothing at all, was the sphere. It wasn't made of metal or stone or fire. It was shifting, liquid, reflective, like a ball of mercury filled with dying stars. I looked into it and saw faces, my father, my daughter, myself, but twisted, sad, frozen. 7 figures knelt in a circle around it, heads bowed, hands pressed to the floor. They were not statues. Their chests rose and fell, slowly, in perfect rhythm. Their skin was pale, grey, cracked with cold, and their mouths were open wide, as if locked in eternal scream. But no sound came out. They were the sound. The hum that had haunted us for days was coming from them. Ellie let go of my hand and walked forward. I tried to stop her, but I couldn't move. My body refused, like the room itself had rules I wasn't allowed to break. The further she walked, the warmer it got, though not in any way that felt comforting. It was the heat of pressure, of depth, of something vast watching. The moment Ellie touched the base of the sphere, the humming stopped. The silence was deafening. The 7 kneeling figures collapsed all at once, like puppets with cut strings. Their bodies turned to ash on the ground, but their shadows remained burned into the floor, permanent, like scars. Then the sphere turned. It didn't have eyes, didn't have features. But it turned, and I knew it was looking at me, at us. It spoke, not in words, but in memory. Images poured into my mind, a vast black ocean, stars rising and falling like embers. Titans made of dust and light, trading stars like marbles. A figure standing before a fire the size of a galaxy, holding a single burning coal and saying, "Let them think it's theirs." And then Earth, our sun, a speck in the dark. Borrowed, the voice echoed. Not spoken, imposed. We were not the first. We were not the only. We were never meant to last. Ellie collapsed, her knees hitting the stone with a sickening crack. I rushed forward as the paralysis broke, grabbing her, shaking her. "Ellie, baby, stay with me." She opened her eyes slowly, and for a second, they weren't hers, they were mirrors, reflecting back my own horror. Then she whispered, "We woke it up." The chamber began to shake, cracks spread across the walls, the veins of golden light turned red. The sphere rose higher into the air, spinning faster. I pulled Ellie into my arms and ran, back up the staircase, tripping, slipping, scraping my hands raw as the hum returned, louder than ever, deeper than thought. We burst back into the shelter just as the wall collapsed behind us. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I already saw what was coming. The world wasn't ending. It was resetting. Back in the shelter, I collapsed beside Ellie. She was breathing shallowly, skin pale, fingers blue. I wrapped every blanket I could find around her, but it wasn't the cold anymore. It was something inside her, something left behind. She opened her mouth and a small puff of steam came out, not from her breath, from within. She coughed once, then said, "They're coming back." I wanted to ask who. I wanted to pretend this was still something I could understand. But when I looked out through the cracks in the boarded windows, I saw the truth. The sky wasn't black anymore, it was glowing red, like fire behind frost, like a sun made of blood. There were more stars now. I didn't sleep after we came back up, not even for a second. The hum was gone, but in its place came a low, steady vibration, like the ground itself was preparing to shatter. Ellie lay wrapped in blankets, pale and still, but her eyes flicked beneath their lids, dreaming, or remembering, or both. The sphere was gone, but something else had followed us. I first noticed it in the mirror. My reflection didn't move when I did. It just stood there, blinking slowly, watching. Then I caught it shifting behind me in the broken reflection of a rusted metal pot. A shape I couldn't define, always a little too far away to see clearly. The shelter wasn't safe anymore. I tried the radio again, static. Then, for a few heartbeats, the sound of footsteps crunching snow. A faint wind, a voice, not one I knew, low and wet, like it had gills in its throat. "You saw it. You brought it back." I didn't respond. It continued. "The stars are not still. They orbit him." Then silence, not even static. Just nothing. I turned the radio off and wrapped my arms around Ellie. Her skin was colder now. Not like frostbite. It felt like the warmth had been reversed, sucked inward. The heat in her didn't radiate out anymore. It collapsed into her core. She whispered in her sleep, "He's almost here." I wanted to believe it was the sphere, just that one impossible object buried below the church. But I knew better now. That sphere was only a beacon. Something deeper had stirred. The stars that blinked above us were wrong. They had always been wrong. We just never knew what to look for. They didn't twinkle. They watched. They moved against the sky's natural rhythm. They circled slowly, like prey around a wound. I stepped outside just before what used to be dawn. The sky was pulsing, a soft reddish glow behind the clouds, except there were no clouds anymore, just a veil. Thin, fragile, and through it I saw shapes, massive, coiling, blinking. They weren't constellations, they were veins. The sky was no longer space. It was skin. When I went back inside, Ellie was sitting up. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes were darker than before, not from sickness, but from something older, something sinking into her like ink into paper. She said, "Do you remember the story about the boy in the cave?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He lived underground his whole life. No sun, no stars. He thought the world was only tunnels. Then one day he found a door. He opened it and saw the sky. She looked up at me. He went blind. I didn't know what to say. My little girl, who used to collect bugs and draw rainbows, now spoke in riddles about cosmic horror like she'd been born into it. And maybe she had. That night the snow stopped falling. It didn't melt. It just hung, suspended mid-air, like time had hiccuped. I reached out to touch it, and my fingers passed through it like mist. The wind howled in reverse. The trees outside bent toward the wind instead of away from it. Something was reversing, like the world had started to remember something it was never supposed to recall. And worse, Ellie stopped blinking. She just stared, unblinking, mouth slightly open, eyes twitching ever so slightly as if watching something too vast to comprehend. I shook her, panicked. "Ellie? Hey, Ellie, talk to me." Her voice was flat. "He's on the other side now, where the dark is thickest." I asked her who. She turned her head mechanically. The one who waited. The one we lit fires to forget. I found the last page of the journal in the pocket of my coat. I don't remember putting it there. It was folded, charred, and written in the same desperate scrawl. "The stars don't twinkle anymore because they're eyes." He opened them. And then, beneath it, in handwriting that wasn't the same, "The sun is not gone, it's hiding. From him." That was when I heard the whistling, not music, not wind. A single high-pitched tone, rising slowly, burrowing into my skull like a drill. Ellie screamed. Blood leaked from her nose. The lantern burst in a spray of sparks. I grabbed her, shielded her, tried to scream back at the sound, but it wasn't meant for us. It was meant for everything. It was a call, a signal, a summons. We weren't the only ones who heard it. From the woods outside, shapes began to gather, not animals, not people, just forms. Tall, spindly, jointless, walking wrong, heads tilted at angles no neck should bend. I watched one drag itself through the snow, no feet, no arms, just a long, worm-like body covered in frozen cloth and broken teeth. I saw another wearing a police uniform, but its eyes had melted down its cheeks like wax. It sang the same whistle from its open mouth. They didn't move with hunger, they moved with purpose. Toward the church, toward us. I barricaded the door and loaded my old hunting rifle. Not that it would matter, I could feel it in my teeth. These things weren't alive in any way I understood. They didn't bleed. They didn't end. Ellie stood beside me now. Awake, still, she whispered, "They're heralds. Just like the ashmen below, just like the voice on the radio." I asked, "Heralds of what?" And she said, "The shape in the sky." I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. The air outside was thick like syrup. Time dragged. My heartbeat felt like it was stuttering. I looked at the sky again and realized with a sinking horror that the stars were blinking faster now. They were synchronizing, each one pulsing like a metronome. Ellie looked up and whispered, "He's almost here." Then the church bell rang. Once, twice, 13 times. And then silence. The 13th bell toll echoed far too long. It didn't fade. It stretched, vibrated the air, shook the walls. I could feel it in my teeth, in my bones, in the marrow itself. I don't know how long it rang, only that time bent around it. The snow outside lifted gently, as if gravity had loosened its grip. Then the bell stopped, and everything else stopped with it. No sound, no wind, no pulse. Just Ellie and I standing in silence inside a shelter that no longer felt tethered to earth. She turned to me, and her eyes were no longer her own. They were mirrors, black and reflective, like twin voids cut from obsidian. But I could still hear her voice. "He's here." The sky split. There's no other word for it. It didn't crack or shatter. It peeled slowly and deliberately, like someone tearing open skin. And behind it wasn't space. There were no galaxies, no stars, no dark velvet of the cosmos. Just him. The shape. I still struggle to describe it. It wasn't a creature. It wasn't even a presence. It was an absence so vast it had weight, a wound in existence, a negative silhouette of something we were never meant to see. It hung in the sky like an inverted sun, swallowing light, memory, and time. And then it spoke. Not in language, in removal. I felt every joyful memory burn away, the smell of my wife's hair, the sound of Ellie's laughter on her first birthday, the warmth of the sun on our porch in summer. All gone, replaced with the deep understanding that those things had never truly belonged to us. We were squatters in borrowed warmth, and the landlord had returned. Ellie stepped forward. I shouted her name, reached out, but she walked through me like mist. She didn't look back. The front doors of the shelter opened on their own. The congregation had arrived. All the things we'd seen outside, humanoid shadows, broken puppets, ancient frozen forms, stood in rows like they were attending a funeral or a coronation. Their heads all tilted upward toward the open sky, basking in the arrival of their god. The shape pulsed once. The ground cracked. The sun didn't return. Instead, its afterimage hovered behind the shape, smaller, diminished. A reminder of its shame, like a runaway child returning home, terrified. "They stole it," Ellie said, "a long time ago. The warmth, the light. They thought he'd forgotten." I finally asked what I'd been too afraid to. "Who are you?" She smiled sadly. "I don't remember." The figures knelt as Ellie passed. Some of them had once been human. I saw faces I knew. Mr. Law from the hardware store. Pastor Briggs. Sheriff Hall with his melted eyes. But they weren't alive. They were echoes, bones dressed in memory. And Ellie, she shone. Not with light, but with intention. She wasn't human anymore. She hadn't been for some time. Maybe she never had been. Maybe she was something else wearing a little girl's shape to keep me safe, to help guide me to the end, to help me accept it. The ground buckled, houses vanished into the earth like dust, trees twisted upward and snapped. The stars fell, not like meteors, but like tears. One by one they blinked out until only the shape remained, vast and pulsing, silhouetted by the stolen sun's dying breath, and from it came tendrils, vast, soundless like rivers of shadow pouring across the sky. They reached down, not to destroy, but to take back. They touched the earth and drank, pulling memories, warmth, history itself back into their endless coils. And the worst part, it didn't hurt. It felt like relief, like waking up from a long, painful dream. I fell to my knees and wept, not because I was afraid, not because I was dying, but because I finally understood. We were a mistake, a flicker of warmth in a place that was never meant to burn, an error given form, a candle lit in a locked tomb. And now the tomb had been opened, and the candle snuffed. Ellie stood before the altar now, the floor beneath her cracked open, revealing the same pulsing sphere we'd seen beneath the church. But now it was fractured, shattered like a broken mirror. Each shard floated, rotating slowly around her like a crown. She looked up into the shape and whispered something I couldn't hear, and the shape answered. A single pulse. The ground shook, then everything went white. I woke up to silence, no stars, no sun, just a dim red glow in the distance. I was alone. The shelter was gone. The town was gone. Only the broken steeple of the church remained, half buried in a field of grey ash that stretched endlessly in every direction. Ellie was gone too. Except, when I stood, I found her handprint burned into the stone, small, delicate, warm. I pressed my hand to it and heard her voice, faint but real. We gave it back. I'm sorry. But it was never ours. You can rest now, Dad. I don't know how much longer I have. There's no hunger anymore, no thirst, no cold, just a numbness spreading slowly from the sky to my bones. Time feels loose, like it could unravel any second. I've tried writing this down, not to warn anyone, there's no one left, but to remember, to prove we were here, that we tried, that we loved. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the shape needed to see. Not worship, not fear, just recognition. The last light is fading now. It's not night, it's not day, it's just what comes after. If you find this, somehow, remember this. The stars didn't care, they just watched. And when they blinked for the last time, we blinked with them. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe.